Hello and welcome to Sideline Story, your destination for sports news, analysis and discussions. I'm Yang Guang. The big topic today, the FIFA Club World Cup right now in the US. Which teams delivered the biggest shocks? Could the tournament signal a crisis for European football superiority? Joining me to break it all down are my fantastic co-hosts Tian Yu and Brendan Gates. Let's dive in. Okay, right now all eyes of football fans are in the United States for the Club World Cup knockout stages. After round of 16, we have 5 teams from Europe, 2 from South America and 1 from Asia. So Tian Yu, which do you think is the best performing team among those names?
Well, yeah, I've got to say Hilal has really turned heads at this tournament so far because, drawing with Real Madrid in the group stage and then pulling off that massive upset against the Man City, that was just a great testament to how strong they are now. And of course, they weren't even champions of the Saudi Pro League last season. They only finished second, but now they've gone toe-to-toe with some of the Europe's biggest powerhouses now, and that's something you just can't ignore. And honestly, this actually puts Cristiano Ronaldo's remarks about the Saudi Pro League in a new light. A lot of people just laughed it off when Ronaldo said the league was one of the top 5 leagues in the world. But just after seeing what Al Hilal has done here, I think it's time for fans to rethink that. Because I'm not saying the Saudi league is already top 5 just yet, but performances like this definitely push the conversation, into that direction. Because they've shown they've got not just the stars, but also the structure and mentality to compete at the highest level. And now, as a proud Real Madrid fan, I've got to also give credit to my team since Alonso took over. There's been this surge of fresh energy in the squad. You see more intensity, more pressing, and most importantly, more young blood getting opportunities. Gonzalo Garcia has been a real surprise for us. He might not be the fastest guy out there, but his technique is so clean. His passing, his shooting, and his awareness and positioning is all top-notch. And the kid just never, stops running. You can tell he's fully bought into Alonso's system. He's pressing like a machine, and that work rate makes a huge difference. From both a neutral perspective and as a Madridista, I've been really impressed. And Al Hilal have shocked the world, and Real Madrid under Alonso is starting to feel something special in the making.
Yeah, that might be the final. We don't know. Al Hilal against Real Madrid.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Brendan, which team impressed you the most so far at the Club World Cup?
Look, I think there's been a few, but the standouts, I suppose, definitely has to be Al Hilal because I think they were the surprise. I don't think anybody was kind of touting them to be as successful as they've been in these early stages, but they really look like a team that is really tactically sound and very confident. Against Manchester City, for example, they never really looked panicked when they were without the ball. City held so much of that possession, but Al Hilal were able to absorb a lot of that pressure very well, and they look really defensively sound. And I think they've got experienced players in key positions, like Koulibaly at the back and Ruben Neves in midfield. And I think they've got what's his name? Is it Marcus Leonardo, the young Brazilian from Santos up front? So, we often talk about the spine of a team, and Al Hilal definitely have a strong spine. So, yeah, they don't have like the superstar names of Real Madrid, PSG, or Bayern Munich, for example. But I think they're an experienced, confident team that have been playing together for a good couple of months now, and so they look really confident out there, and I think they've delivered surprise performances. And I think we'll get into the performances of some of the other continental teams later on in the podcast, but I guess some of those teams from other continents don't necessarily have the same pressure and expectations on them that European teams may have. So they might just be going out there, playing with a little bit less of a target on their back, so they might just have more opportunities to perform at their best. And I think, it doesn't take away from the good performances of Al Hilal. I think they deserve an immense amount of credit for getting through to the quarters and, delivering some of the incredibly strong performances that they have, particularly against Manchester City. But, that's only one standout performance. I think all of their games that they've looked really very sound indeed. But yeah, I think that's also helped their cause. But again, having, looking confident with and without the ball and having, experienced and exciting players in key positions has definitely helped them.
Yeah, I thought Manchester City was doing a quite good job, and it could be a turning point for them from a very disappointing European season. I mean, they were only signed to have won all 3 group stage games at Club World Cup, but bang, from nowhere, Al Hilal came out and really caused a major blow. I mean, yes, Cristiano Ronaldo was absolutely right when he said, the Saudi Pro League is on the same caliber with the European leagues. And no harsh feelings, but I think Ronaldo didn't win a major league in Saudi Arabia for a reason. Al Hilal is really impressive.
Yeah, great testament
Yeah.
to how the league is.
In this sense, the Club World Cup offers a great platform for fans to compare European clubs and non-European clubs. I mean, with the previous game formats, where, continental champions just square off in one knockout game, it just doesn't offer a full picture of this comparison. But now we've already seen some classic matchups between European powerhouses and non-European clubs. So Tianyu, do you think the gap between European giants and non-European clubs are smaller than you expected before the tournament kicked off?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the gap is definitely smaller than expected going into the tournament. As I mentioned earlier, Al Hilal pulling off that win over Man City was already a huge testament. But it's not just them. Some of the Brazilian teams have been incredible too. I mean, Flamengo stunned Chelsea in the group stage, and Fluminense knocking out Inter Milan in the round of 16 was also something nobody really saw coming.
And the Botafogo even beat Champions League winner PSG in the group stage.
That's insane. I mean, there are a few reasons behind this shift. Some people might point to the weather, because some of the games were played in the sweltering afternoon heat of the US, which definitely impacted players' stamina and performance. But hey, both teams are playing under the same conditions. So I think that's not really an excuse for the bad performance from European teams. I think the bigger factor is the evolution of these non-European teams' lineups. I mean, take Al Hilal, for example. As Brandon just mentioned, you look at the squad, and you've got guys like Ruben Neves, Koulibaly, and Joao Cancelo. They are all seasoned players from top European leagues. I mean, the influx of capital has changed the game, and these teams aren't just showing up, they're really competing. As for South American clubs, they not be splashing cash on buying players, on international stars, but they've got deep talent pools and very solid infrastructure. Nobody would say that they're lacking quality by any means. And one moment, I mean, that really struck me was in Real Madrid's opening match, and because there was a stretch in the game where Al Hilal were passing the ball fluently, pulling off some beautiful combinations in the midfield, and just slicing through our defense line and pushing the ball forward. And for a moment, I was wondering if the two teams had switched jerseys, because the level of play looked like it was coming from a top European team, not a club from Asia. So yeah, I think after watching this tournament, I think we can safely say the gap is closing. Maybe not closed just yet, but definitely shrinking fast.
Right. There was a moment in the group stage game between Bayern Munich and Boca Juniors that really shocked me. Boca used sloppy pass from Bayern to play counter, and Boca's forwards, Merentiel, a name I had never heard of before, totally beat Bayern's defense line. First, ran past Jonathan Tah, and then used the trick to dribble past Stanisic, calmly send the ball into the net for an equalizer. I mean, that creativity within a blink of eye just blew my mind. That's an individual brilliance that I haven't seen for so many years in European football clubs, which emphasize more on team play
Structure,
and calculated tactics nowadays. And all the upsets you just mentioned by those South American and Asian teams, credits must be given to these teams because they were so underestimated before the tournament, including by me. I made the prediction last year that the Club World Cup would be another Champions League tournament when it goes to the semi-final or quarterfinal stages, because there will be no teams left except European teams. But such a slap in my face, and apologies to those teams I just mentioned, because they didn't only put up a fight against the European elite clubs, but actually knocked them down. So, Brandon, any games or moments during the Club World Cup that really shocked you or caught your attention from non-European clubs?
Yeah, I mean, of course, the Al Hilal win over City, and I think Fluminense eliminating Inter Milan 2-0 also turned a couple of heads. But look, in terms of the gap closing, I mean, I suppose it has definitely shrunk, but I don't know if it's necessarily closing very quickly. I mean, of course, the knockout format and the weather conditions and that sort of thing, I think has definitely benefited some of these teams from non-European leagues, because I think that can be quite a leveler, because performance on the day and motivation factors and that sort of thing can really impact one or two games. But a knockout format tournament also has to be taken into consideration. If you had to put these teams like Al Hilal, Fluminense, or a couple of these other teams that have done really well into Serie A or into Bundesliga or La Liga or the Premier League, and put them through a multiple game season in European conditions, how would they fare in those leagues? I'm not entirely certain they would be doing as well as they are currently doing. So I think there's a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration. But aside from that, their performances at this tournament has been fantastic, and I think it's definitely an eye opener for European teams, and I think it's also great for overseas league exposure. Look, I don't think there's ever been any doubts in terms of the growth of the Saudi league. I think we've known, Christian, like we've said, Cristiano Ronaldo's been talking about it for quite some time, and I think just the investment that's going into that league, not necessarily just with buying foreign stars, but also the emergence of young talent coming from that region. We've seen the performance of Saudi Arabia, for example, at the 2022 FIFA World Cup, and I think we've also seen some strong performances from teams from those regions in Asian continental competitions and that sort of thing. So I think that there definitely seems to be a strong development in football in Saudi Arabia and just in those kind of regions of Asia. But in terms of the Brazilian leagues, I think the Brazilian teams have been a factory of now European talent for many years now. I mean, all of the biggest stars from the biggest teams. I mean, Vinicius Jr., of course, at Real Madrid came from the Brazilian leagues, and that's just one of many that are now the top performers for some of these European teams. So I think it's no surprise that some of these Brazilian teams have done well, and I think that some of those players from those teams will also now be shipped off to European teams at some point, as we always see with these Brazilian teams. But it never really seems to concern them, because year after year they just seem to bring out talented player after, so one leaves, another one comes through, one leaves, another one comes through. So I think we'll always see exciting performances from these Brazilian teams. But yeah, look, I think as we get to these quarterfinal, semi-final, and final stages, we'll see how much that gap has really shrunk. But I think, look, I agree with Tian. I think the weather and elongated seasons and all of that sort of thing shouldn't be excuses for professional teams and the European players, because all teams are competing under those conditions. But also realistically, I don't know how intense the seasons in Brazil and Saudi have been for some of these teams at the FIFA Club World Cup, and of course the weather conditions in Brazil and Saudi Arabia might be a little bit similar to the daytime the weather of the United States compared to like Munich or Paris, for example. Although that being said, I mean, I know Paris and France and Germany are going through extreme heat waves at the moment. So even if they were playing in Europe, they'd probably also have a difficult time. But yeah, I just think that this has been a great platform for teams from particularly Saudi and Brazil and a couple of other leagues to show the world that European club football is not the only place to find, extremely well coordinated teams and high levels of play. I think it's been a great eye opener to the world that, not all of the action takes place on the European continent, that football really is a global game. And I think that these teams, in particular from Saudi and from Brazil, have really showcased that. And I think that's been fantastic.
Yes, at least the Club World Cup offers an alert alarm for European giants. Others are catching up. Okay, before we move on, here's a recap of the biggest sports stories in China and abroad of the past week. Olympic champion Zheng Qinwen was stunned by Czech double specialist Katerina Siniakova in 3 sets in the opening round at Wimbledon. The 22-year-old fifth seed suffered a third successive Wimbledon first-round exit.
The match today I lost, for sure I can learn a lot about it. But I'm not gonna let this enter in my mind because, it's just one match. I lost in Wimbledon, another one. I really believe I should put more focus there on the court. Yeah, that's all I can say because I already lost here, so I just gonna focus in the coming future.
American second seed Coco Gauff was the most surprising casualty, losing 7-6, 6-1 to Ukraine's Diana Yastremska in the opening round. Seeded players Daniil Medvedev, Alexander Zverev, Hugo Rune and Jessica Pegula also crashed out early. In the NBA, the Milwaukee Bucks surprisingly waived 9-time All-Star Damian Lillard. The remaining $112 million owed to Lillard will be paid out over the next 5 seasons via the NBA's stretch provision. Milwaukee later signed a contract with Miles Turner in a 4-year, $107 million deal. The Denver Nuggets have enjoyed an impressive haul in the early going of free agency, adding Jonas Valanciunas and Cameron Johnson via trade, and inking Tim Hardaway Jr. and returnee Bruce Brown Jr. in the period's first few days. The Houston Rockets also made a series of ambitious moves, landing Dorian Finney-Smith and Clint Capella after acquiring Kevin Durant through trade. The Los Angeles Lakers and DeAndre Ayton agreed to terms after the center cleared waivers and became an unrestricted free agent. The UEFA Women's European Championship kicked off in Switzerland on Wednesday with drama right from the opening match. In front of home crowd in Basel, Switzerland squandered a 1-goal lead and lost to Norway 2-1. Norway coach Gemma Granger credited her team for adjusting at halftime.
I have a huge respect for Switzerland. They're a very good team. Was I surprised with the first half? No. At halftime, we talked about what we needed to do better. It was a strong talk at halftime. We have high standards in this team.
In the other Group A match, Finland shocked Iceland 1-0 in Thun, marking another major upset. Lando Norris took victory at the Formula One Austrian Grand Prix, beating McLaren teammate Oscar Piastri. Max Verstappen retired after Kimi Antonelli hit him on lap 1. Charles Leclerc finished third. The San Jose Sharks have selected Wang Haoxi with the 33rd overall pick in the NHL draft, making him the highest drafted Chinese player in National Hockey League history. The 17-year-old had been playing for the Oshawa Generals in the Ontario Hockey League since December. And finally, tributes to Liverpool forward Diogo Jota and his brother Andrea. The two passed away in a car accident near the city of Zamora in Spain on Thursday. Local media say the 28-year-old Portuguese international was traveling along the A52 motorway when their sports car veered off the road and burst into flames, killing both occupants at the scene. The football world is in shock as tributes pour in for Jota, known for his skill, determination and key role at both Liverpool and Portuguese national team. Jota, who got married just days ago, helped Liverpool win the Premier League last season. He also helped Portugal win the UEFA Nations League title by beating Spain in the last match of his career.
Sideline Story brings you all things sports related. The hottest topics, latest events, juiciest stories, all with a very personal take. Subscribe to Sideline Story Podcast for heated sports discussions covering events that are happening in China and around the world.
Welcome back. Yes, teams from South America and Asia, they did fantastic jobs at Club World Cup, but I think the European teams didn't deliver their best yet. I mean, for example, Man City, they had 33 shots against
Yeah.
Al Hilal and led in any other stats on the pitch, but scored 3 and conceded 4. And Bayern Munich, I got this feeling that they can't really get concentrated for like 90 minutes throughout the group games and the knockout games so far. Maybe it's the weather conditions, maybe the players are already tired after an already exhausting season in Europe. So, Brandon, do you agree that the European teams haven't reached the fans' expectations so far? And so why didn't we see total dominance of European giants at the Club World Cup?
Yeah, look, I definitely think they haven't reached fans' expectations yet. I think that may change as the competition progresses. Like we've also spoken about the problems in the NBA, where the kind of early stage games don't really entertain. But then when these bigger teams get to the latter stages, that's all of a sudden when these players start performing for the cameras, So we might see similar things from European giants like Real Madrid, Bayern, PSG, for example. But that's not to take away from the fantastic performances from the Saudi teams, Brazilian teams, and a couple of other surprise packages from other continents around the world. But look, I think there's numerous factors. I know we shouldn't be finding excuses for these powerhouse teams where players are earning hundreds of thousands of pounds a week and are elite level athletes and professionals and have been playing at the highest level for many years. But, even though we don't like excuses, some of them are quite valid. So I think that the weather conditions have definitely hit the European teams harder than the Brazilian and Saudi teams, for example. I think that's just a fact. And, there's also been murmurings about motivation levels from some of these European teams. I think I mean, look, Jurgen Klopp has made certain statements, and I think Pep Guardiola and a couple of other high level minds in European football have come out and said certain things about the FIFA Club World Cup that really puts it into a negative light, at least from their perspective. And I think away from the fact that some of these European teams have had some extremely grueling, lengthy domestic and international seasons, but have also had extremely limited holiday times, I think some of them would rather definitely be on the beach in the south of France, for example, than playing, at this competition. Whereas, some of other teams like from Brazil and Saudi and, even Africa and a couple of other continents, their motivation levels might be extremely high because maybe they're not used to this level of exposure and they really want to showcase to the world what they can do. So I think there's also potentially been higher motivation levels from non-European teams. Those performances really deserve credit. And I think it's also just showcasing the world again. High level football is not only found on the European continent.
Right. The mentality of different teams going into the tournament might be different. I mean, for players like for Auckland City, they will play the likes of Messi, like Mbappe. So the mentality of going into that game must be, I must show my best to the superstars, to the best players on this planet. But the mentality of the European players might be, why I'm doing this. I should be on the beach of South France. Yeah, it might cause some gap in terms of the motivation of different players. But I got to say, the South American teams impressed me the most, particularly. I mean, their game can be so tough and physical, even more physical than the European teams.
Yeah.
Obviously, they earn far less than those in Europe, but the amount of effort they put into the game is the same, if not even more. So, what do you think South American teams did particularly well, especially against the European teams at Club World Cup?
Well, yeah, like I touched on earlier, I think capital plays a bigger role than people usually give credit for. I mean, the overall GDP of many South American countries might not look impressive on paper, but that doesn't mean their top football clubs are strapped for cash. Because in fact, recent data shows that the 3 biggest South American powerhouses each brought in over 180 million euros in annual revenue. Now, that might not match the giants like Man City or Real Madrid, but it puts them right in the mix with strong European sides like Benfica, Porto, or Napoli. And that level of financial stability just gives them the ability to build competitive squads, not just to keep talent, but also, invest in infrastructure and their staff. But I think beyond the money, what really sets South American clubs apart is the football culture. Because you could argue that, football is like a religion there. Just take Flamengo as an example. They have over 30 million fans. And that's just an insane number. And that kind of passionate...
Yeah, I can attest to that. So I went to Rio de Janeiro in 2019. And I can tell you, every single apartment, I would say at least 99% of them had a Brazil flag outside their window and a Flamengo flag. I've never been to a city in my life where I've seen so much support for one football club. I don't even think you would see something similar in like Liverpool or Munich or any other city. That was really something that blew me away. The support for that team in Rio de Janeiro really is like nothing else I've ever seen around the world.
Yeah, you can even argue that half of the population in South America are all football fans.
Yeah, I've seen cars in Beijing with the stickers, Beijing Guoan, the local club, but just a few of the cars, not every car. I can't imagine every apartment in Rio de Janeiro have a Flamengo stickers on them.
Literally.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that's impressive.
I've never seen anything like it. It was incredible.
Yeah, so I think that passionate fan base just feeds into everything. The match day atmosphere, the youth development, and even a club's identity. And because of this, deep-rooted football culture, you see some of the best youth development systems in the world coming out of South America. These clubs are constantly producing talent, not just to feed their own first teams, but also to generate some serious transfer profits. Players like, the new arrival of Real Madrid, Franco Mastantuono, the previous one, Endrick, came through those pipelines. So, they're not like a one-off case. They have already formed a system, a pattern through this. It's really no surprise that these South American teams are doing so well on this tournament.
Right. Maybe for some South American players, the Club World Cup is a stepstone for them to let more European clubs know them. Because other than, the FIFA World Cup, there are few tournaments they can be exposed to the European giants. Maybe that's why they go 100% against European teams. Let's see if the non-European teams can go all the way to the final of the tournament and which of the traditional powerhouses will fight for Europe's glory. With that, we end this episode of Sideline Story. Thank you so much for joining us. Subscribe to Sideline Story and leave your comments wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information, you can also check our website at radio.cgtn.com. Until next time, stay on the sidelines with us.